right. Hello, everyone. Welcome as you are joining us. We're going to give it a few minutes just so that everyone can join and get in appropriately, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I can see people joining fast and furious. We've got 100 folks in already. That's wonderful. Um, as we're joining and getting in, Justin, do you want them to do this part in the chat? Do you want them to start now?
Yeah, if they're able to, that'd be
All
great.
right.
And the
Okay.
chat, the Q&A, whichever boxes
Mhm. Okay.
facilitate better.
Well, then I will go ahead and start with my housekeeping announcements. Hello, I am Leslie Alnessix. I am the Senior Marketing Manager for Technology here at Macmillan, and I am joined here by our wonderful friend Justin, who will be speaking with you today. Just so you know, we will have the Q&A running, and we have a bevy of Macmillan folks who will be here keeping an eye on that. So any of your questions will get answered either live or we'll follow up with you after the event. This event is being recorded and we will be sharing the slide deck and the recording with you after the fact. So if this is anything you want to refer back to, you will be able to do that. So if you would like, you can go ahead and say hello in our Q&A. Just let us know where you are and what discipline you teach.
Yeah, it sounds like the chat might be
Yeah,
disabled. So,
the chat is off because this is such a big webinar, so we're using the Q&A instead.
okay. So yeah, if anyone wants to say hello in the Q&A, that'd be great. Tell us a little bit where you're from, what discipline you're coming from. That'd be awesome.
I see some of you are already putting stuff in. That's wonderful. I'm going to give it just a minute more for folks to join, and then we can go ahead and get started. All right, and if anyone's in Florida, I hope you're all doing all right.
For real.
And wild time for folks. Got some people in Texas, Oklahoma State, Lewis University. We've got some folks in California, some chemistry folks in Texas. Wonderful. Oh, I love what a diverse group of instructors we have. This is going to be really fun. All right. Well then, with that, we have many people to welcome. We are here. Justin, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, thank you all for being here and joining me for the next, hour or so to talk about what we're going to ultimately do is a high structure course design, but we're going to be thinking about evidence-based teaching practices in general and how we can use that to improve your student engagement and student outcomes. A little bit of background on me. So I'm trained as a chemical engineer and a bioengineer and a biologist. I'm our associate dean at the Colorado School of Mines for undergraduate studies. I'm also a teaching professor in chemical and biological engineering and quantitative biosciences and engineering. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what I teach in a little bit, but I'm kind of all across the board with STEM. I know we have a lot of non-STEM colleagues with us today, so welcome, welcome. What I'm going to be showing you again kind of comes out of the STEM education literature, but that doesn't mean it has to stay there. It's totally transferable to any discipline. I truly believe that. And I love that we have such a diverse backgrounds of crowds with us again to kind of share some insights and learn from each other about how you think these types of course design strategies might work in other fields. So with all that in mind, we'll get going. We are going to make this interactive. We will be using iClicker events, so you can see the toolbar there. We will give you the code here in just a moment. And Leslie, maybe if you can share that with everyone now, that'd be great. And then I'll bring it up again in a moment. But go ahead and click on that link that Leslie just shared with you, and you should be able to join our session and participate. There we go. Great. And that's the cool thing about this. As you noticed, you didn't need an account. You didn't need to log in, no password or anything. You just hit the button and go. So you're going to be able to interact via this system too. So awesome, awesome. Excuse me. So let's get going. Before we start, I have a kind of an addiction with ChatGPT and making cartoons. It's weird, I know, but it does a cool job. So what I like to do with workshops is I take the title and I put it into ChatGPT and I say, can you make me a cartoon of this? And so for this one, right, I took the title of beginning with the end in mind, dot, 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 and I said, make me a cartoon of this. And here's what it got. So this is a little preview of what our workshop's going to be like today, obviously. I may or may not have asked it to add orcas. You can decide which one you think that was. But anyways, if you haven't played around with cartoons and image generation and the AI tools, it's fairly fun. All right. So by the end of this webinar, you're going to be able to do a few things. You'll be able to explain what a high structure course is, describe the benefits of teaching with high structure, and be inspired, hopefully, to adopt principles of high structure design into one or more of your own courses. All right, and again, we're going to be using iClicker events a lot, and we're going to start off with this question. So we got that code again. You can see it on my screen. You can click on it there from Leslie. Just go to that website and join. No need to log in again. And here's your prompt. So here's what I want you to do. So let's say your chair or department head informs you you're going to be teaching a new course for the first time this fall. And I know we're into fall, but let's just say it's spring now. What's the first thing you would do with regard to course design? So here, we're going to open this up for you. So this is a short answer question. So you will be able to now see my screen on your screen, whether you're using a laptop or a tablet or a phone, you see my screen on your screen, and you have 140 characters to just freely type. So go ahead and type whatever comes to mind. If you're put in this situation where, a few weeks out, a few months out, you're told, hey, new course for you. What would you do? How would you handle that? What's the first thing you would do? Don't say panic, because that's probably what we all feel initially, but rather the practical things, right? You've gotten over that emotional hit. So now you're going to think about, what am I actually going to do with course design? So type in what comes to mind here. We'll give you another minute or so to do that. When you're done with your question, you're typing, make sure you hit that send answer button so it goes through. And looks like a lot of you are doing that. We're up to 50 responses already. And please, if you have questions as we're going, put them in the Q&A. We'll do our best to keep an eye on them. And we will take those out. Oh, Elizabeth had a question there at the bottom. I'll check the learning outcome. Sure, I will happily go back for you there. So those are what we're going to be doing here over the next now 40 minutes or so. And we will be sharing, I believe, sharing the slide deck as well as a recording, Leslie,
Yes,
right?
indeed.
Yeah, so everyone will have access to all this after the fact. So if you miss anything, you will get to see it again. All right, and we got the iClicker link there. We should be good to go. All right, perfect. You want to see the cartoon again, Phoebe? All right, we'll get back to the cartoons too. All right, cool. All right, so let's take a look at what you're saying here, though. So here's what we can take a look, and we'll just kind of scroll through. We got a lot of responses, but we got learning objectives. We got a syllabus with learning outcomes, more LOs, right? Look online to see what's already been done. Again, LOs, great. What you want students to walk away with. Course objectives. Course description. Oh, find someone else who's done it before. Absolutely. Don't reinvent the wheel totally. Figure out what else is going on first. Look at the book you want to use, right? Find what are the major topics you need to cover, right? So we got a lot of great stuff. I'm just going to stop it here. So right, we got a lot of great ideas here, and you can use this in class, right? So iClicker was developed for classroom purposes. I'm using it for this workshop, but you do this in class, you can ask your students anything with this type of short answer question. And you can see, again, a lot of you are talking about outcomes, a lot of you are talking about materials, book, finding other people. So you're all doing the right things to start off with what you want to do, right? So we're going to kind of take that and think about, in this context here, how can we design new courses or redesign existing courses? All right. And to do that, I want to pose one more question for you before we really dive into it. Okay, so whenever I teach a class, and I've taught at UC Irvine before here, now I'm at Colorado School of Mines, I ask my students this question at the end. What was the most useful part of the class in terms of learning the course material? Pick one, okay? And here's the options I give them. So they get the textbook alone, so that means their actual textbook, just that. Textbook plus reading guides. I'm going to tell you more about what these are later, but these are Word documents that I make that are tied to the textbook that help with transparency and let students know exactly what I want them to pull out of the reading. In-class lessons, so that's time with me, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. Online assignments, so that could be your online pre-class homework, after-class homework with Achieve, something like that. And then discussion sections or a lab. So for this data, what I'm going to show you is, excuse me, this is for introductory biology. So I taught this at UC Irvine. I'd have 440 students at a time. I like to think of it as 880 eyeballs at a time. And I also taught human anatomy with about 140 students. So again, I asked them at the end of the quarter, we were 10-week quarters at Irvine, what was the most useful part? And so I want you to predict, okay? So we're going to do another multiple choice question now. So I want you to predict which one of these 5 do you think students responded most frequently? So in other words, which one of these 5 options do you think students said was the most useful in terms of learning the course material? So go ahead, turning this into multiple choice. Now on your screen, you should see 5 buttons, A, B, C, D, and E. Just hit the letter that you think it is, and we'll be ready to go. And so your web page should reload, should refresh. If it doesn't, you can try to log in again, or you can just reload that page and it should come right up. We got about 140 of you answered already. I'll give you a few more seconds to try it out. Yeah, I think we need to have that clicker link again in the chat, Leslie. Thank you for doing that. And this is kind of mimicking your student experience. Now, your students, they would have an app most likely on their phone or their tablet perhaps. So it's a little different experience, but you can run it on any browser window you want as well. All right, so let's take a look at what you said here. All right, so E, so we got more than half of you are saying those discussion or lab sections followed by in class. Very little for the reading. One person said textbook. All right, so here's what they actually said though. All right. Here's what they actually said. So when I first saw this, right, I was kind of perplexed. I was a little stunned. Notice this is a very different experience, or excuse me, outcome of what you all said too. Okay. So for example, though, what's going on here, right? So I looked at first at these peaks, and then I looked here in class, and I'm like, well, that's me, right? So what did I do wrong? There's something wrong here. What did I do? So I took like an ego hit. I thought, okay, well, I must be doing something wrong in class. But then I thought, well, you know what? Actually, this is okay. This is actually perfect because these are high structure courses, and it took a while, but now I said, okay, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. All right. So it was really cool to see this result that these, and again, these are biology, STEM courses, but the reading plus the reading guide, which helps them read the book, was really, really perceived as valuable. In class was just a lot of practice. So let me tell you a bit more about what high structure courses are, where they came from, and then start to think about how you might adopt this for your own courses and disciplines. All right, so high structure course design. So this is a term that you might not have heard before. This came out of the biology education research literature around 2007. The primary folks who kind of came up with this language was Scott Freeman at University of Washington, as well as Mary Pat Wenderoth at UW, both biologists. And Scott Freeman's kind of our, father figure, if you will, in biology education research. And the idea is that can we provide instructional scaffolding to our students to guide them through the learning process before class, in class, after class? And I'm sure a lot of us do that already, but it was really cool to see how Scott and Mary Pat kind of put this together with this structured idea, and then we navigate through it. So here's the kind of the model. So we start with backward design. So, and a lot of you said this in your clicker question, right? You're talking about learning outcomes. So backward design being, we start with our learning outcomes. What do we want our students to be able to do? What do we want them to be able to accomplish by the end of a lesson, week, module, course, whatever, right? So we want to start with what we want our students to be able to do. Then we think about, well, how are we going to assess that? How will we assess whether or not our students have achieved these learning outcomes? And then finally, let's design some instructional activities to give them practice opportunities so that they do well on the assessments, which measures their ability to complete the learning objectives, right? So that's backward design there. All right. So then with high structure, though, we take that assessment and instructional activity piece and we break it into 3 buckets. So we have before class first. There's typically some kind of content acquisition ahead of time, with some kind of self-assessment with a pre-class quiz, pre-class homework, writing assignment, whatever it might be. So you're holding students accountable for some content they've acquired before class. In class, active learning heavy. So we're going to ask students to work together, group work, solve problems, complete activities. Active learning, though, can be individual. It can also be in group. It doesn't have to be loud and busy. It can be very quiet too. So there's a spectrum of active learning for sure. And there's also room for lecturing. I'm not an anti-lecture guy. I'm a choosy lecture guy. So I want you to think about kind of selectively lecturing during certain parts. I call that selecturing, but still facilitating active learning to get your students engaged. And then after class, so we're going to think about students studying and reviewing the course material. There's probably some kind of after class homework, some kind of review assignment to help get them ready for larger summative assessments, which occur on a frequent basis. So there's no magic number here, but typically in a high structured course, you'll probably see something like quizzes every other week or something like that. So that's the idea, though, with high structured course design as a general introduction there. The other thing we want to think about here is alignment. Okay, so there's a lot of pieces in a class with starting with your outcomes, moving to assessment. So we think about alignment in terms of how our course materials, before class, in class, after class, how do they connect back to the learning outcomes? And then also, how does each session build on each other? So what happens in class should build on before class. What happens after class should build on before or during and before class, right? So we're kind of building and aligning throughout the whole process. All right, so that's kind of our general introduction to high structure. And what I want you to do now, we're going to do some more clicker questions here. So I want you to, now you get to touch your screen. All right, this is the fun one. It's called a target question. So what I want you to do is touch your screen here. So which part of high structure do you think students would have the most positive impact on your students? So on your screen, whatever device you're on, go ahead and touch the screen and then hit that send answer button. You should see a little dot pop up on your screen. And then we'll get to see a heat map of what you all said here. All right, as you're doing this, I'm going to take a look at the Q&A here. All right. David's asking about naming. Does naming matter? So I teach large lecture chem for non-majors. You have study guides. Yeah, I don't know if the namings, I mean, I think study guide has a certain preconception to them. For me, reading, and I'll show you some examples of these later, David, they are very specific to reading or watching videos even before class. Study guide to me does bring up a different thought and a different product. So yeah, I think naming and pitching and how you put a lens on things does matter. I definitely agree with that for sure. All right. All right, so we're going to stop this here. Okay, next question. So same screen here, but now I want you to touch your screen. Which part of high structure do you think will be the most challenging to either develop or implement in your own courses? All right, so again, touch your screen, hit that send answer button. Okay, so first time was what's going to have the biggest positive impact. Second question here about what's going to be challenging to develop or implement. Yeah, Molly, thanks for sharing in the chat there. Yeah, if you're the iClicker didn't load for you, if you'd rather just type in the Q&A, I'm happy to check out your responses there too. Right. Okay, so we got a good number here. We might be overwhelmed with dots on this result, so let's take a look at how this looks. But basically, with these target questions, right, you get a heat map, so you can kind of see what all your students or whoever's in your workshop here is saying. So here we go. So here's the first one. So this was the positive, right? So which one had the most positive impact? So a little tough here to tell, but I want to say during class got the most dots, as you can see here. So it looks like we got the most dots for during class, and then followed by after and before. Now, for what's the most challenging to develop or implement, looks pretty similar, right? So we got a lot for the in class, which is this is a common response I see. And again, we got a lot of we have a big diverse audience with us today in terms of backgrounds and disciplines. But so when I do these for STEM audiences, I typically get that pattern. In class is the most impactful, and in class is also the most challenging to develop. So fortunately, there's a lot of resources out there to help with in-class activities. It does depend on your discipline and what's out there, but I agree with you. In class can have a huge impact for giving students practice opportunities, for building community, for helping model expert thinking and help students learn whatever you're teaching them. So I totally agree there. But also, right, how do you design that 50 minutes or 75 minutes to be really engaging and worth their time and worth your time? So that also can be challenging. All right, so that's a little overview of what high structure is, but let me tell you a little bit now about the research behind it, because again, this came out of the biology education research literature, and me as trained as an engineer and scientist, I like to say as an educator, like to build my work on evidence on what's out there. So not only do I use this model and use other evidence, I publish myself. So consider myself a DBER person, discipline-based education researcher. And I do research on high structure course design. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, my own studies in a moment. But first, why teach with high structure, right? So what are some of the research findings on this model? So first, students perform better. And I do have these references. They're on the back of the slide deck, and you'll get these after. But study after study now, when you increase structure, so when you add more elements of high structure as opposed to a more traditional didactic course with maybe one midterm, one final, very little outside assignments, the more structure you add, the better students do. Okay, across the board. And it's not just that students do better, but certain groups of students do disproportionately better. So you might have heard terms like performance gaps or achievement gaps, or just differences in student outcomes based on their demographic. So as an example in STEM, you might think of historically male students doing better than female students in calculus. Okay. But studies have shown now when you add structure to the course, those gaps get smaller. Sometimes they even go away. And that those have been studied based on race or ethnicity, based on gender, based on college generation status, first gen versus continuing gen, things like that. Students also feel more belonging. So my colleague Mike Wilton in Santa Barbara, he did a study where they added high structured introductory biology there, and they surveyed students on belonging, and they found that belonging went up. Students felt more connected to their university, they made more friends, felt more a stronger sense of community because you're doing a lot of group work here. We're engaging, we're working together as a group to succeed in this model. Okay. You also can do more stuff in class, right? So more active learning in class, higher Bloom's activities in class, right? So Bloom's taxonomy being a measure of cognitive skills or tasks from kind of low level remembering up to high level synthesis or evaluation. You're moving some of this content before class, right? You're asking students to read or watch videos or do other assignments and hold them accountable for it. So then in class, you don't necessarily have to lecture through some of the basic stuff. You can do some activities or a couple clicker questions or something to just see how they're doing and then do more fun stuff, right? You can add case studies, you can do data analysis, real world scenarios, whatever it might be, group discussion, peer review, all sorts of stuff. So you have more time in class to do those more active activities and honestly more fun activities. And you're also helping students develop self-regulated learning skills. So by using this model, I hope you're appreciating all of the practice opportunities built in. There's so many times that students will be learning, checking their learning, checking their learning, figuring out what they know, figuring out what they don't know. So by doing this model, there's so many practice and review opportunities baked in. Students are learning how to develop their metacognitive skills, their self-regulated learning skills. And therefore, if they move on to another course that maybe is not as well structured, they're able to bring that skill set from your course with them forward, and which is a really cool thing. So we're not only helping students excel in our classes, we're helping them develop great study skills via this model moving forward to their future classes as well. Because not every class is, going to be designed the same way. Everyone has their own thing. And so by using a model like this, again, we're helping students develop that frequent study cycle or self-regulated learning model. All right, so that's kind of a big picture overview again of what high structure is and some of those research findings for why it works, what the benefits are. All right, so let me tell you a little bit more about what I do, and then I'm going to give us some time to think about some examples of how you might apply this, what it actually looks like, in your hands. So again, I come from a STEM background, trained as an engineer and a scientist, and I teach across STEM. So, I got a lot of breadth and not a lot of depth, honestly, because I kind of spread myself thin with topics, but I teach in the biological sciences. So I use high structure in intro bio and anatomy and physiology. I also use high structure in chemical engineering. So I teach introductory thermodynamics and material and energy balances. These are both of our sophomore level chemical engineering courses. So I teach sophomore level of chemie because for two reasons. One is that I really enjoy welcoming the students to our major. Their first year of college, the first year of our major is sophomore year. So I get to kind of welcome them and get them set up for success in our program. The second reason, though, I teach sophomore level is because I can't do differential equations anymore. It's been too long. I forgot how to do them. They don't trust me to teach the higher level stuff. So I'm good where I'm at, though. And then I also use high structure in biomedical engineering. So I teach introduction to biomedical engineering as well. And then, as I mentioned, I consider myself as a DBER person, discipline-based education research. So what that means is I do research on education and teaching in my disciplines, right? So I study high structure course design in biology, in chemical engineering, and biomedical engineering. So I look at how to develop, implement, and assess different components of these courses. All right, and I just wanted to share with you a little bit about some of my own research. So over my career, again, I'm a teaching professor. I've never had a graduate student or a postdoc. I've never had an external grant. I've tried, though, and they're hard to get. But I've done all my research with undergraduates only. And these are three of my students have all now graduated. So Coleman was a senior in chemical engineering. Sydney was a senior in quantitative biosciences and engineering, and Alex was a student in chemistry here at mine. So, and I just want to share a little bit about some data to show you the impacts of high structure. So what we did in this study is that we did a survey that looked at course data and student performance over 2 years. We had 69 semesters of data from 39 unique courses. And you can look at our disciplines here. So we have, again, we're Colorado School of Mines, we're a STEM school, that's what we do. So most of these departments listed are STEM. We do have one department though called HAS, Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. So our students do take 18 credits in Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. They're just taught out of a single department. That's how we do it at Mines. Our least technical degree at Mines, not joking, is applied math and statistics. That's just who we are. We embrace our nerdship. Also, what we did was a survey. So we asked instructors to submit survey data on what do they do before class, what do they do during class, what do they do after class. Coleman, Sydney, and Alex actually went and observed these instructors teach to measure active learning percentages, things like that. And then we looked at passing rates and Z-scores to look at comparisons. So just wanted to show you here about what these results looked like. And thank you for that comment. If I'm talking a little fast, I get a little fired up on these. I get so excited to share. So I'll try to rein me in. Thank you for please share those thoughts. All right, so here's some of the data we got from this study though. So what you're looking at here are deltas, okay? So these are, the y-axis is change in percent passing, and these are actual percentages. So what that means is, 20%, so 70 to 90, like that's what we're talking about, percentages. And then on the x-axis, we have different categories of student demographics. So we have differences in student demographics based on gender, ethnicity, generation, and Pell. And these are majority, if you will, minus minority. So what we're seeing here is the male performance minus the female performance, the continuing generation performance minus the first gen performance. Students who are eligible for Pell, or not eligible for Pell, I should say, minus eligible for Pell. This is a proxy of socioeconomic status. And so what you're looking at here is that courses in our study sample that had a lower medium structure, so meaning they did not have all the elements of high structure, they had bigger gaps in performance and bigger passing rate, bigger gaps in passing grades than we had high structure. So for every case in our study sample, courses that used high structure had smaller passing grade gaps, which is great, right? We want all of our students to be passing ideally, and we want, if possible, students to be performing equally no matter their backgrounds. So by having high structure in this case, we're seeing those gaps get smaller. Now, this is for all the courses in the study. If we look at just the introductory courses, and this is a thing in STEM, where we have Intro Bio, Gen Chem, Calc 1, Intro Physics. These are notorious courses that are sometimes referred to as gateway classes, because if you don't get through that, then you're kind of not fit for STEM majors, which I don't agree with, but that's the perception on these gateway courses. So what if we look at just the intro courses? Well, it's even a bigger effect. Okay, so you think of these are most likely first semester, first year students. These gaps go away. They even invert in some cases. But look at this one, for example, right? So you had, almost 15% of continuing generation students, meaning mom or dad has a four-year college degree. They're passing at a 15% higher clip than first gen students like myself, whose parents didn't go to college. But now when you have a high structure course, it's gone. Right? So we're adding scaffolding, we're adding structure, we're helping our students succeed. So this is a really, really, really cool result. This is just, I just want to be totally clear. These are just survey results looking at student data and student performance data. This is not causative at all. This is just an observational study. Did I get lucky in my data set? Maybe, but with 69 semesters or over 5,000 students in this sample, I think we're okay to say that in addition to the other research I cited, high structures having a big impact on student outcomes. So with that as kind of a background, a primer, if you will, what I want to do for the rest of our time here is think about how you're feeling about high structure and give you some practical tips to kind of start thinking about this and using this. All right, so let's do another target question here. I love doing the emoji question like this. You can use it for anything. How was your first day of class? How are you feeling about this course? How was the exam yesterday? At the last day of class, how do you think this whole class went? So go ahead, touch one of the emojis. Which one are you feeling the most right now? How are you feeling about using high structure in your own courses at this point? And then again, hit that send answer button, and that will give you a chance to submit where you're at with emojis. So this is from this website, openmoji.org. They're all freely available emoji graphics you can download and use for anything. And again, it's kind of a different way to get student response data in terms of feelings or attitudes. You can always say, on a scale of 1 to 5 or a scale from A to E, how are you feeling today? Or how are you feeling about this assignment or something? But opening it up to 18 emojis makes it a little more fun. I did this with 700 students a couple of weeks ago, by the way. One of our freshmen, I'm running these freshman seminars with external speakers. I had 700 students in the room. It didn't work well because basically every face was covered with dots. So you got to kind of think about your audience and how many you have if you want to be able to do something like this. So, but let's take a look here. So we got a lot of you responding already. So here's our emoji map. All right. So we got check it out, right? So we got a lot of faces. I get it, right? This might be new to you. You're trying to feel it out. Got some star faces. That's great. We got some parties. Someone's mind blown, hopefully in a good way. I get that too. No pukey faces. I'll call that a win. All right. So, all right. But anyways, right. You can do something like this in your own classes. It's really fun to do something. Maybe you have whiteboards in the class. You don't want to use technology. You have them draw a certain emoji on the whiteboard, hold it up, right? But stuff like this, meet our students where they're at. So, all righty. So let's see here. Okay. So again, kind of switching gears here for the last bit about some examples and practical tips that you can start thinking about how to do certain parts in your courses. So as I said, right, this literature, this course design models came out of STEM, specifically biology. For me personally, I'm expanding it beyond biology, right, in engineering, A&P, working with colleagues in chemistry on this. I do my own work on the side with other universities and other departments to help them kind of adopt evidence-based teaching strategies in their own courses to improve student outcomes. So this really can be used for any course, discipline, level, class size, format. I've used this with as few as 20 students, with as many as 440, right? It works across the board. The thing is, though, you got to be willing to tailor, right? You got to be willing to tailor this approach to match your needs for your students, your instructors, your institution. I'm not trying to say this is a one-size-fits-all model at all. Absolutely not. Even within my own courses, I do things a little bit different because I know, introductory thermodynamics, that's a different course and a different student body than introductory biology. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. Bridget, online, 100% works in online. I think it's actually essential for asynchronous online because you're providing structure to students in a situation where they don't have instructor contact. And so having more levels of structure, more scaffolding can really help them do well. So I've done this in synchronous online, asynchronous online, all sorts of things like that. Yeah, and actually, Janice got the same question there. We can maybe talk about more at the end with doing this online, and I'll do a shameless plug at the end, but I'll do it now too. I do have a book with Macmillan coming out this spring on high structure, whole chapter on online, how to apply this model. So, but I'm happy to share more today and catch up with you over email before then too. All right, so let's look at some examples though of how we can do this in some of your courses. So I'm just going to give you one slide as an example for pre-class, in-class, after-class assessment, just as some ideas to get us started. To really dive in, needs a lot more time than we have today. But again, that's what I do kind of on the side with my own business. And I work with faculties and departments and universities and administrators to help do this. So it needs more time, but today's just going to give you a little, get you some ideas, hopefully get you excited. All right, so pre-class, first of all, okay? So pre-class, first of all. So this is one here that reading guides, as I mentioned earlier, that David, you commented on, can be really, really helpful here. So Leslie, if you're able to put that link in the chat there too, I'd appreciate it. So reading guides, what these are things where we're going to help students basically decipher what we want them to get out of the textbook, all right? So, and the link Leslie just put, this is a link to my own personal website where I have a reading guide template. I also have a bunch of reading guides for different textbooks where you can just download them and use them. Just check them out. You check them out. But so you might have seen this before, right? So you might have seen a student's book highlighted to the wazoo. Maybe this is informative to them. To me, they've highlighted everything except for one sentence. So to me, it's not useful. So we don't want this for reading, but we want something like this. Okay. And I know this is hard to see, but that's why I gave you the link there in the chat. So you can go and look at my templates, look at my actual reading guides. But what these are, again, these are Word documents that are designed to go with your own textbook or video you have students watch, or novel, or newspaper article if they know what a newspaper is, or anything like that, right? You can design whatever you want. But the idea is you're going to have students be active with their reading. So you're going to have them define terms, summarize concepts, complete tables, drawings. A lot of textbooks have like concept check questions in the middle, references of specific figures, check out figure 13.8, things like that. Because the idea is when you tell a student, hey, the exam coming up with the quiz on chapter 6, well, they're like, well, what do you mean, everything? Because there's your textbooks, your materials, your source material. It's probably too much, and you don't actually assess everything. So with a reading guide, you take this big bunch of content and you start narrowing it down. Because I think it's really important as an educator in teaching to be transparent with your students. I always tell my students, I want to know what you know, not what you think I want you to know. And reading guides are my first crack at that transparency because I'm able to take the big textbook with way too much stuff and then narrow it down. So I'm telling them, you're the reading guide. This is what you're actually responsible for. Okay. The key thing with this, though, is that you need to follow up. Okay. As we all know, if you ask students to read or watch a video or something and there's no kind of carrot/stick, they might not actually follow through with it. So using pre-class quizzes, pre-class assignments, whether they're written assignments online with Achieve, something like that, you're going to be able to help your students hold themselves accountable for what they just read or what they just watched, what they found out in their reading guide. So if you couple the reading assignment with the guide, plus some kind of pre-class low stakes quiz, it can be totally super low stakes. I give my students unlimited tries to do it as long as they get it right, because I want them to know they got it right or not before class. And then they're able to move forward in class, we address any misconceptions, and we get to do a lot of fun practice stuff. Okay. And I have this Chronicle link up here too. I was interviewed by Beth McMurtry from the Chronicle over the summer, and she wrote a lovely article in there about our conversation about reading guides in the context of student reading difficulties. So that's before class. So reading guides could be one thing you try out. Now in class, right? Clickers, right? iClickers. I've been using them with you today. Some of you have heard of these before. Some of you might use other platforms that are out there. That's great. No matter what you got, you're helping students stay engaged, right? Because the research on this shows, it improves student engagement and participation, improves attendance, retention, and sometimes grades. It depends on the study. Sometimes it's a really nice positive trend. Sometimes it's kind of more neutral. My own hands and my own studies with iClickers, big significant positive correlation there. The better you do on iClickers, questions the better you do on exams, for example. They also give you a quick peek at what your students know at any given time, right? So as you've been seeing, I'm able to see what you're thinking. Now imagine that was like a content-based question. I would get to know what you know at any given time. It helps me adjust my lesson in real time. If I think everyone should be getting this question right, but for some reason it's 50-50, okay, we got to stop. We got to figure out, okay, well, what's going on here? Let's dissect. Why are we off base here? So they give you that data to let you figure out how to adjust the flow of your lesson. They're also a low or no stakes way for students to assess their learning in real time. So as you've been seeing too, right, you get to see what you know. You get to see what you're writing, what you're proposing. So it gives the students another level of practice opportunity to let students figure out what they know, what they don't know. They can fill in those gaps and keep reflecting. All right. So in class, think about response systems, something like this. Okay, after class, I've gotten the longer I've been teaching, this is year 12 for me, the more and more I move towards what's called authentic assessment. So, I'm kind of honestly getting a little tired of the standard, quiz, exam, homework model. So what can we do to make our learning experiences and our learning assessments more realistic, right? So I have this little chart here of, things you can add to your class that can be to make assessments and just the class itself more authentic or more real life, from easier to more difficult to add. So things like adding news stories, adding problems from real exams, thinking of like nursing and the NCLEX, you put like real stuff in there, bringing guest speakers in, journal articles, case studies. I made these things up called pod cases, where you take a case study, but now use a podcast. So podcast plus case study, pod case. I have those on my website too with that link you got. Adding real projects, field trips, hands-on experiences, right? Anything we can think about as authentic, meaning these assessments will mimic what a professional might do in our field. So things like this can be really helpful to add on to, again, authenticity. Still, you're probably going to want to have some kind of traditional summative assessments, quizzes, exams, projects, whatever. But think about the authentic nature. And this website here from Indiana is a great way to get started. Okay, assessment. I mentioned earlier about frequency. More frequent assessment, the better when it comes to traditional quizzes, exams, things like that. So here's just a couple studies on this. So high stakes exams, right? That one or two midterm, one final model, they've been linked to increased cheating, stress, anxiety. Honestly, for myself, when I still do finals, I try to do cumulative finals, but I still don't sleep well the night before because I'm always stressed out about how they're going to do and did I do the right? Is it too hard, too easy, things like that. I don't do midterms anymore though. I've ditched that for the frequent quiz model. So the use of frequent lower stakes quizzes as opposed to these, higher stakes exams has been shown to be beneficial. So just a couple studies here. This one meta-analysis showed that we got significant positive correlations between frequent low stakes quizzing and student learning. And then we also have frequent low class quizzes. Students that had those frequent low stakes quizzes did better on exams than students who only had midterms and finals. Also, for what it's worth, student professor evaluations went up when they used the more frequent quizzes versus the higher stakes exams. The students thought more highly of the professors. And again, don't forget those authentic. So I think it's a kind of a combination. That's where I'm at these days, a combination of the frequent summative quizzes. I do weekly quizzes in all my classes for the most part, plus some kind of authentic assessment response. Amelia will get you that website link at the end if that's okay. And again, we'll be sending this out so you'll have access to everything. Okay. All right. So give you another question here to ask. So you're probably already doing some of this stuff, right? You might not have heard this called high structure, but I bet you're doing some of these pieces. So let's try this. This is a multiple answer question now. So what I want you to do here is now you get the 5 buttons again, A, B, C, D, and E, but now you can touch more than one. Okay. So which of these things are you already doing in your courses? Maybe just pick a single course to make it easy, or maybe you're doing in all your courses. But again, now you got all 5 buttons again. Hit as many as you'd like, and then hit that send answer button. And we'll be able to look at what you're all saying for something like this. So this is a step up from multiple choice. We get more than one answer. These are great for in class if it's a content-based question because it really challenges your students' ability to evaluate multiple responses and see which ones might be true and which ones might not be. So yeah, go ahead again, click in as many as you need here and hit send answer because that will be a nice little view here of what you're all already doing in your courses. Carrie, yeah, the question about podcasts, I'll be happy to answer that at the end too. Thank you, Salvador. Appreciate it. Have a good class. All right. So here, let's take a look at what you're saying here. So now we can look at this a couple different ways. So this is what all of you are saying for each individual answer. So it looks like 72% of you are doing some kind of pre-class reading or watching. A third are doing the pre-class graded assignments. A lot of us, 80% plus, are doing active learning. 2/3 got after class assignments of some type, and then more than half are doing frequent assessments. That's great. We can also, if you want, turn it this way, and we can see the different combinations. So looks like the most popular combination was A, C, D, and E. So we got a couple options here to see how we present our results. But again, right, you're probably doing a lot of this stuff already. Maybe you've not used that word high structure, but some advice here, think about what you're already doing and then start slow. So add a little piece at a time, build on what you already have, and then hopefully enjoy the benefits from you and your students. It is, though, an iterative process. You do need to tailor this approach to your unique situation and your unique students. You know your situation and courses and students way better than me. So I'm just trying to give you some ideas at this high level that you can think, okay, yeah, this would work for me. This wouldn't work for me. Okay. And so let's revisit this figure here as we're starting to wrap up. So one last question for you here. What's one word you would use to describe high structure course design. So you got to spend about 40 minutes with me so far. It's a very fast introduction. But go ahead on that in your iClicker. One last question here, one last clicker question. Type in a single word. And I'm going to stress that word single because I want to present the data in a different way. So go ahead, type in what's the one word that comes to mind here to describe high structure course design. I'm scrolling through the Q&A here as you're doing this. Oh, Messi, you got 1,500 students in a freshman seminar. Let's talk. I'd love to learn what you're doing with that number. I'd love to talk about engagement with you. It's a little hard with you have that many 18-year-olds in a room for me, 700 for me. But yeah, let's chat about that. Good luck with that many. All right. And I'm seeing some words come up here in the chat too. Elisa said useful, Juliet paste, Janice active, Amber supportive. I appreciate it. So let's take a look at what you're saying here as we're wrapping up. So now we can look at individual words, right? And we can kind of rank them. So it looks like the most common words here were, effective, engaging, or we can do a nice word cloud. That's too squishy. We can't read that one. There we go. But yeah, we got an idea here, right, of what you said here. So we can kind of scroll through it. It's kind of hard to see with, so many different words here and so many different colors going on, but I like all of the things you're saying. Engagement again, complex, engaging, exhausting. Sure, aren't we all? In whatever model we do, it's exhausting, I feel like these days. All right, effective, connected, flow. All right, that's great. That's great. I did this as well with 700 students at once. That was a hot mess. It was the whole screen with the words were so small. That was too much going on. All right, so let's start to wrap up here. So some things that I want you to take with you from this workshop, this webinar. So what do you like about this? What do you not like? I guarantee there's some avenues and some pieces of this that you felt more connected to, and some that you were more meh on. So start to think about that. How do you think this course design model will be received by your students, by your colleagues, by your administrators, right? Especially if this is out of the ordinary. If this is a model of course design and teaching that your university or department isn't used to, how do you think introducing something like this would come over? Do you think it would work in your discipline? Again, I'm a STEM guy, not hiding that. I think it works across STEM no matter what. I do believe it works in non-STEM fields too. I'd love to hear from you when we're wrapping up today. If you do think it would work and if you're in a non-STEM field, and if you think it would work well or not. And then what resources would you need to implement as well, right? One of you said exhausting there in the chat, right? It can be a lot of time. It can be a lot of energy. So what would you need to do this well, right? All right. And then last closing thought for me here. So let's think about impact. All right. So when I was first applying to teaching positions, again, I'm a teaching professor, back in, oh gosh, it was 2012-ish or so, I was applying for jobs for real. This was my teaching philosophy. Yeah, here's what it said. And you can chuckle if you'd like, but this is what I put in my teaching philosophy. I still have this in here today. Okay, so I at this point I was kind of done with the bench. I was done with doing bench research. No more lab work for me. It just wasn't satisfying. But I love being in the classroom. I love working with students. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm not going to do the breakthrough studies. I'm not going to advance technology. But maybe a student I teach will do that, right? Okay, but things have changed a little bit. Okay. So last year I had a birthday that ends at 0. And your brain gets a little funny like that, I never thought I'd be listening to Taylor Swift. It's my kid's fault, but it's good. But right, things happen. So I updated my teaching philosophy a little bit more. So here's what it says now. And again, you can chuckle, but the idea here, right, is that I got to a point in my career, I'm in year 12 of teaching. I had a 3-year postdoc trained in how to do this stuff. And I thought, I got something to say. I want to spread beyond my silo, beyond my university walls, and kind of get out there a little bit more. So that's why I'm so, so, so thankful for people like yourselves that take an hour out of your busy days to work and sit with me to talk about evidence-based teaching strategies. Because again, it's folks like you and future faculty out there. You're going to be the ones that are going to help us improve student outcomes in STEM, non-STEM, whatever we want. We all know there's still a lot of work to do in higher ed to make our students, better citizens, give them better outcomes. They're paying so much money for college. We want to give them the best experience we can. And it does start with evidence-based course design, evidence-based teaching strategies. So I want to thank you all so much for being here with me today and spending this time. Please check out my stuff. You got a link to my website earlier. If you enjoyed this and you want to dive deeper with me, check out my website, let your colleagues know. And again, I do have this book coming out with Macmillan this spring. It's all about high structure course design. Yes, it does have the word STEM in the title. You'll notice when it comes out. But again, it doesn't have to be just for STEM. It can be for anybody. So with that, we still got plenty of time for more Q&A. Thank you so much for your attention and your engagement. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going, everybody. Thank you so much.
We have some really excellent questions in the chat that I wanted to draw attention to. So we've had several questions about class sizes, both very small and very large. How would
Yeah.
you say that this high structured approach works for those different environments? Or like how might you tweak things to fit those different situations?
Yeah, totally great question there about course size and how it works with, and it looks like, yeah, Carrie, at least Carrie had a question about that less than 30 or bigger classes too. So yeah, so I've done this with as few as 20, done as many as 440. I've done it across disciplines in STEM. So what works for me to kind of keep consistent is the pre-class, right? So I think the pre-class reading guide, and I do modify mine nowadays with also video links because I find some students, some days they just rather watch a Khan Academy video. I'm okay with that as long as they're taking the time to dissect it and digest it. So the pre-class reading guide plus pre-class quiz, I pretty much hold that constant no matter what class size or class discipline or level I teach. I saw a comment there too about from Emily about upper division, juniors and seniors versus freshmen. It works across the board there too. But yeah, I keep that consistent. And for me, that's manageable because I use online learning management systems to help me with that, right? So whether it's Canvas or Achieve or something else, I'm able to have these auto-graded pre-class assignments. Again, I give my students multiple attempts, if not unlimited. I don't grade the reading guides, and that's what I recommend. I view them as optional tools. I show students data. I have a paper in an intro bio showing the more reading guides you do before class, the better students do on exams. So I show them data to convince them of value of these. And then also in class, if students don't do the reading, if they don't do the reading guide, I'm not going to spend the whole time lecturing over the stuff they miss. So they feel a little pressure there to for that alignment to build up. So the pre-class works easily, the same, big class, small class. In class, and the assessment is really where it's a little different though, right? Because if you have 440 versus 20, the types of active learning you can do are very different. Now, some folks might say, well, you can't really do active learning with large classes. I disagree with that, respectfully, because, well, I've done it, but also it's just different forms, right? So, and especially if you're coming from a discipline where you value more group discussion or student presentations, yeah, that is hard to do with 400. But things like iClicker, things like quick, think, pair, share, talk to your neighbor, things like 1 minute silent writing, you can do all those with unlimited numbers of students. You can do it online. I've taught online with 300 students online before. It works. So you can do all these things with the numbers. They just look a little bit different. You know, I taught Introduction to Biomedical Engineering this spring. I only had 60. I was able to do student presentations. I was able to do design projects. I was able to change my assessment. I had every student write the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program proposal as 50% of their grade. That's one of those authentic assignments I was talking about. I couldn't do that with 400 because I can't give feedback. I can't manage all that. So again, the assessments in the in-class, I think, look different. But the pre-class and even the after class, if you're doing an online homework system, that pretty much, in my opinion, stays pretty much the same no matter the numbers. But you do need to tailor what you do as a professor in class to make it engaging with that many. And again, how you assess. And some of us are fortunate to have TAs that can help with grading projects and things. Some of us don't have that. And so you got to think about that time outside of class for grading when you have numbers at scale. But again, I'm living proof, and I know a lot of colleagues who do this model with very different course numbers and sizes. You just got to take the time to tailor it and iterate to see what works for you.
Justin, there was one other question that well, first off, thank you. That was such a thoughtful, wonderful response. Just want to say that first. One more question I think that we have time for is how do you balance this amount of time commitment? Linda asked this, and like we know these students have jobs and kids and lives outside of this one class. And so how do you find a balance with all of this, the pre-work and the post-work? and making sure that it fits into their lives?
It's a wonderful question there, Linda. Yeah. So, and it's something we all need to think about because our students are pulled in so many ways, right? Attention for certain topics and certain commitments goes down and up and all over the place, right? So to be able to do this successfully, you do have to build in supports for situations like that, right? So the biggest thing across the board, whether you use a high structure or not, is just being flexible with your grading. And the way I do that is with a dropped assignment model. Jamie Jensen, she's a biology professor at BYU. She calls this the life happens policy, which I really like. Basically, right, let's say I have 13 pre-class assignments. I do weekly pre-class assignments these days, and I have 13 homeworks, after class weekly homeworks. You get to drop two of each, right? So you got something going on, you had a particularly busy week, midterms, family, job, whatever, no big deal. It doesn't penalize your grade. You still get an opportunity to do it, to learn from it, but you don't have to worry about it hurting your grade. In class, I usually drop 10% of the days of class. So that way, if I'm using clickers or whatever, well, 10% are gone. So if you forgot your phone died, you couldn't make it, no big deal, right? And even on quizzes, we drop our lowest quizzes, number one or two quizzes depending on the class. So because everyone has a bad day, so being flexible and working with students on that can really help. But also the idea of this model of the time involved. So I mentioned I do weekly pre-class now, right? So when I was at UC Irvine, I used to do daily pre-class. And the reason I do that was because in intro bio there, these students are all living on campus for the most part. They're all 95% for pre-med. They love this stuff. So every day it was easy to bang it out. When I came to Mines, I tried daily pre-class and it didn't work as well because my Mines students were involved with a lot more stuff in terms of extracurriculars, research, jobs, and things. And it was just a different dynamic. It's a different student population. So I've gone to a weekly model. So you have to, again, tailor based on your student demands and what you know their availability might be. But again, with this model, especially with the weekly quizzes, we're trying to avoid these big peaks, like you have those midterm giant peaks of time, all-nighters and stuff like that. My colleague Adrian Williams likes to say that we take those big peaks of stress and big peaks of time with a midterm model and we kind of just smooth it out. So it's just a constant drip. It's a constant trickle throughout the entire semester. I'd say for my students in intro bio, for example, they're spending maybe 2 hours a week outside of class preparing for class, at the pre-class, maybe an hour or two a week after class with their homework, and then maybe another hour here or there for studying, filling in some gaps, lab stuff. So I'm thinking maybe 5 hours a week, which I know is not the magic number, right? It's a 4 credit class. It should be 12 hours a week based on Carnegie standards. But you just look at data on students' time on task, students' time on a specific course. I'm not saying my courses are less rigorous because of this, but I design them in such a way that we get so much practice in class. We get so much practice out of class that I don't think they need to spend, a significant amount of hours outside of class to succeed. But again, we're all different. Everyone's situation is a little different. So you got to be able to be willing to tailor and to change and iterate based on that.
All right, we are just about at time here. Thank you all so much for your participation. There's been a very lively Q&A going, so we will try to
Yeah.
follow up with everyone who has questions there. I want to remind everyone that this was recorded. We will be sharing the recording. We will be sharing the links. We will be sharing this slide deck. Several of you have asked questions about how to use iClicker in your own courses. We'll include that in the follow-up as well. So with that, thank you for spending an hour with us, with Justin. I hope it was fruitful for you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And we'll hang out for a couple minutes if you have any other questions. Otherwise, again, thank you for your time and we really appreciate you. And we hope you can use this in your future courses.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. Please do follow up. I'd love to talk with you more about your experiences. Thank you all. Good luck.
And lots of people saying thank you and Justin
Yeah,
saying that you were a really wonderful presenter. So thank you for that. Just hanging out to see if there's any questions. Um,
sure.
Several people have been asking if iClicker costs money. So it comes included at no additional cost if you are using it with Achieve, or there's models where your school can get a site license for everyone and the students don't pay directly. There is also an option if neither of those work for you that students can purchase access to it.
Yeah, and I should jump to the other one now too, Leslie. I've been doing a webinar with Kat at 1.
Okay, well
So,
then, thank you all so much.
yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and end this, but everyone, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
thank you all. Take care.